Okay, hello. So, if I've understood this correct, you should be able to hear the intro, you should be able to hear the intro, and I will say, welcome. My name is David Postansky, and this is the Extreme Improv Skill Show podcast. It's been a little while. Wow, just to think, the last time there was an episode of this predated lockdown. It predated all of the craziness of COVID-19, so it's been quite a hiatus. And it's been a hiatus for a few reasons, which I'm going to quickly get into, and then we're going to talk about today's subject matter, which is virtual improv. So it's been a hiatus because, one, the world came to an end, and it might be coming back, we're not quite sure. Two, it seemed a bit ridiculous and redundant to be doing a podcast about improv skills when we couldn't go on stage and practice them. And three, I've been very busy practicing improv skills by doing virtual improv. And now I'm ready to get back into the saddle, talk about how to do some skills. Which you'll find out about a lot more in the coming days, weeks, months. And specifically, from my experiences thus far, tell you a little bit about virtual improv, which is the subject of today. So, virtual improv is an amazing thing. A year ago, I wouldn't have even known really what this was. It may almost certainly did exist in one form or another. But since COVID-19 became a thing, people are doing virtual improv shows left, right and centre. Extreme Improv started doing a virtual show, I think, from the very first week of lockdown. The first week of lockdown, there was supposed to be improv shows that we were doing in Leeds. I think there was one about a week later in Manchester. There was going to be one within the week at the Camden Comedy Club in London. And it all got shut down. We've missed shows as we're speaking in the Brighton Fringe, at the Aylesbury Waterside Theatre. We were looking at doing some more festivals abroad. Obviously, they didn't come to pass. And yet, we have been doing lots of internationally based shows because we've been streaming. So, in this first episode where I talk a little bit about virtual improv, I'm not going to get terribly into the tech side of it. I'm just going to talk about the differences between improv on stage and virtual improv. It's an interesting thing. I think everyone understands the idea of virtual improv as the name. People understand what virtual reality is. You could say online improv, and that probably makes just as much sense. But virtual improv gives the sense of virtual reality. So we're doing this virtually. And it's different. If you use Skype or Zoom or any of these other platforms, StreamYard and Google Hangouts, Facebook Rooms or whatever they're called, there's various platforms, various options you can use, but you see yourself via a webcam on a computer, and you can see the other performers in little boxes. Everyone's in their little windowed boxes next to each other, and you try and play the improv games or do the improv scenes or just do theatre that way. And it's very different in that you can't have the interaction, you can't cross the stage in front of another performer, you can't go over and shake their hand or push them, or you can't give someone a hug, and you can't do any of these things which you'd normally use as what you'd normally do on stage, that you just do in real life. You can't do it. Mostly, I think people also talk directly to their camera, but when I say talk directly to their camera, they're just looking at their screen, so they can see what the other performers are doing to react to it. That's an important thing we'll speak about briefly in a moment. And so it changes things up quite a lot. Now, when it comes to what we've been doing with Extreme Improv, we've been doing a version of our live show, which itself, as people who listen to the podcast and have listened to the podcast will be aware, we'd started doing the Extreme Improv podcast well over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, in fact. And it hadn't been quite so regular, but we had been doing it regularly this year. And we'd adjusted the format. We'd made it so that it would work as a podcast. And the fortunate thing when trying to work out how to do a virtual show is the format could one-to-one go straight from the radio onto a virtual show streaming, because it meant that we could do everything like we would do as if it was an audio-based show, and we had the added benefit that the audience could see us. Now, when we do audio-based shows, we can't rely on visual storytelling, we can't rely on visual jokes, we can't rely on physical interactions between players, and just in that same sense that you can't do that on audio, on radio, for the most part, you can't do that on a virtual show. You have the benefit on a virtual show is you can give a big indication of physical interaction, and people can read your facial expressions, but you can't go over and physically interact with people like you would on stage. So that's the first thing that's the big difference when you're doing virtual improv, is just getting used to the fact that there's things that you would do naturally in real life, interacting physically and storytelling where people are reading your body language, reading your facial expressions, and these aren't 100% going to work. Now, the next big thing is that for the most part, you'll have performers that you'll see from the chest up, because they're probably going to be sat at their webcam, or even if they're stood, they're still stood, so they're close enough to be able to hear and see and interact with their computer, but they're not going to be, you won't see the full body person. You'll see them probably chest up. They could move back, which will give them room to move around their room, but of course they still won't be able to interact with the other players in the same way that they would on stage. And that's an interesting thing. Players who give themselves more room and then they run around, you'll watch what they're doing, you'll watch what the other player's doing to react to them, and they could both be running around, and you'll just kind of piece it together in your mind that these characters are running around together, even though you're literally watching them run around separately. Or there'll be a character who's running around, or an actor that's running around rather, and the other actor might just be sat there. And they might be giving the same intention on their face, the same sense that they're running away when they're literally not running. They're not on stage. You might get people run on the spot to give a sense that they're running away, but they might just be sat there. But as long as you play the intention on your face, the audience will be able to follow what your intention is, what it is you're meaning to do. So the physical space around you is the biggest difference, is that you can't interact with the other players physically. The audience, they can't see your full body for the most part, and that even if you run around in space, it's something that the audience can stitch together between what they're seeing from the two players, but they literally aren't together, because they could be all over the world. All of these players could be two different people in the same house, and we've had that on our show. We've had, and using different webcams, so they're not in the same box on the screen. We've had two players who are in the same box on the screen if they're in the same building, same house, wherever they're streaming from. Then you'll get players who might be in different parts of the same country. We've had lots of people from all over the UK, lots of guests from different parts of the United Kingdom who have been on the show. And then you might get players who are all over the world. We've been blessed, and this is one of the big advantages of virtual improv, is that we're making some great connections with players from the United States. We're making connections with players from Malaysia, with players from Italy. We've had players from Russia, players from Australia. It's been fantastic, and some of these have become regular players. I'm going to give a particular shout out to Improv Chattanooga, with Diz and Shalita and Beth and Mac and maybe another one or two, I forget, who we've interacted with. I've been on a couple of their shows, or their open houses as they have been running, and they've often guested on our shows. And there's another group whose name I forget now. Apologies, Nick from Italy. He's had several members of his group. We've got the Bromantic duo, Asad Khan and Ramina, but That might even be pronouncing his name wrong. Ramin, rather, who are in India, and it's been great to have them on our show a couple of times. I've seen a couple of their shows, and I'd have never even become aware of these guys' existence. Yeah, you might have done something on Facebook, or you might have done something on Twitter, and someone might see a tweet, or you might click like or retweet or something, but you're not going to get the same interaction. Where I've had interactions now where you can build up like a friendship with these guys, and a working relationship with them, so that you know what they're like, their sense of humour, you get a sense of their timing, and this is great. It's something that you wouldn't be able to do, and it gives you as a performer, as an improviser, the opportunity to learn different styles, to learn, okay, what's the rhythm of things in New York. Last night we did a show, and we had a great performer called Elkie, who is from New York, and she was a fantastic performer. We got to see what the style of humour is that she brought, and it was really funny. And we're getting people from all over the world. We had people from, people, I wouldn't say from Japan. We've had people in Japan on the show. We've had all sorts of people from all over the world join us. Now, when it comes to what games you can play, it's interesting, just because most games, in one way or another, can work virtually. Now, I made a joke a few weeks ago when I did a discussion about improv over Zoom or virtual, however you do it, that when you play these games, how could you play something like Stand, Sit, Bend? Because you're not all in the same space. That's a physical-based game. But when you think about it, as long as the audience can see you, one of you can be standing, one of you can be sitting, one of you can be bending. Now, if you were to do lay down instead of bend, which is the usual substitution there, that may not work, because they wouldn't be able to see you lay down. You'd probably be going out of shot. But there's probably a way around it. And if you were to do, what's another game? We've got a game called Body Language, where you have to use a body part, and the audience assign you a body part. And if you get assigned your feet, the audience really wouldn't be able to see it. So it's just about adapting it, asking for something that's likely to be seen. And there's a lot of body parts that work for the webcam presentation. Eyes, nose, mouth, ear, hands, shoulders, chest, neck, loads of things that you can still do. Teeth. As you can imagine. So there's just ways where you adapt them to work. Now, we're constant with Extreme Improv. We're constantly experimenting. I'm always trying to find, what else can I do on these streams? What else can I do on these streams? And today I'm talking about what things do and don't work. One of the things that was very important was to be able to have audience interaction. Now, when you're doing improv, it's great if you can hear the audience laugh and you can feed off of it. And it's a little bit jarring at first when you're doing improv virtually and you don't get that audience reaction, because you're like, is what I'm doing good? Is what I'm doing, funny? Is this liked? Am I off base here? But actually, for the most part, I think people have got used to the fact that you don't have a live audience. If you've got a selection of performers, I've said right from the beginning, don't mute your microphone. Let's, if you want to laugh in the background, laugh. Obviously don't talk or have the telly on in the background, because that's not going to help things. But if you're going to laugh and help give a sense of atmosphere, that's great. And then your audience are just people who are watching you online, which will be through the various platforms that are out there. There's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Mixer for the next month. As time of speaking, that's about to close down. There's YouTube, obviously. So people there can give comments. And one of the things that we thought was important is to make it so there's still this same sense of community. Not just, I didn't like the idea that the audience would just watch our show and I'm reading comments, so it just feels like dead space of time. And they can't hear the suggestions, they can't react to them. So I made a decision that it felt important that we could see all of the different comments we're getting from, regardless of what platform people are watching on, come up in the stream so people could see it, so people could get a sense that they're not watching it alone, that there is this sense of audience participation, that it's not hokey or rigged, that I'm just pulling things out of thin air. you can really feel that it's a live show. You see someone suggest something, or you suggest it, and then you'll see the performers, the MC, if I'm emceeing it, reacts back, and it's working really well. There's certain technical challenges which I won't go too deep into today, but another difference is just making the performers spotlighted. So again, won't go too much into the tech side of it, but especially with Zoom, which is the one I have used most, you can put like a character. You can put a performer so that they are the main focus that the audience would see on the screen. You can tell performers to switch their cameras off, so then if you only want 2 players in a scene, you don't need to have everyone else just sat there, with weird expressions on their face as they're watching the other performers. You can tell them to turn their cameras off, and then the audience will only see the performers you want them to see. So there's lots of things around it, and I'm sure in the future, because obviously virtual improv and virtual theatre and stuff like this has only really come about because of the COVID situation, and I think it's going to be something that stays. I think it is going to be something that stays around forever now. It will probably get a little bit smaller where when the world opens back up, as it's just giving signs of being about to reopen in certain areas. People will be fed up of looking at their laptops and phones and tablets, and they'll want to go back out and enjoy people's company in pubs and bars and clubs, and hopefully one day the theatre, because we're not quite there yet. And then if people are watching improv shows in theatres, it's going to trump out what you can do virtually 99 times out of 100. So probably the viewing figures and the audiences and people will lose interest in doing virtual improv. But I think it will then start to creep back in. I think it will go away a little bit. It will go away a lot. I predict that 80% of the virtual shows that are happening in the last few months will stop probably within the next few months. And then within a year or two, it'll probably creep back up, so it's actually not too different to what it is now. Just because the benefits of a virtual show is, unlike in the real world, I haven't had to go out and get flyers printed for this. I mean, you could, but it doesn't seem necessary. I haven't had to post flyers door to door, hand them out in the streets to people. Again, I could, but the point is, I'm not having to go to a place. I'm not having to go to a town where we've got a show and start handing out flyers, because people from all over the world, even if I could hand out flyers locally in London or in Buckinghamshire or Brighton or Sheffield or wherever, the rest of the country just as much could see it. So I'd be focusing on a local town to watch something that's online. So what if people in Russia wanted to watch? I don't have to hire venues. I don't have to organise 6 performers to come from London and Essex and Brighton, all to congregate in a theatre in Buckinghamshire. I don't need to have that hassle, because if anyone within 10 minutes notice, 2 minutes notice realistically, could join a Zoom call, and suddenly they're performing on a platform to a worldwide audience. That's a massive advantage that virtual improv has over the real world. Also, there are disadvantages. Internet connections, things can go wrong. The screen can freeze, the software can freeze. God knows, if I had just done the first show and not persevered, I would have given up there, because it was playing at about 2 frames every 30 seconds. Things were glitching, things were crashing. I've had to get better internet connection. I've had to improve my setup. I've connected an old television as a second monitor just to be able to see everything on screen at once. It's been like a real mission just to work out everything I need to do this. But again, I won't go over all of these technical points on this show today. But what I'll end on here, I know I've been a bit scattered about what works, what doesn't work. I'm just talking about virtual improv generally now, and I know that. But what I would like to see in the future is that Zoom or another company does more work to create a better virtual stage, to create something so that there aren't necessarily the boxes that limit the space between performers. That perhaps, imagine if you could even use some sort of video game controller to move your screen so that you can make it look like your character is moving left or right, like a 2D platform game, across the screen. So you could mime walking and your character would walk across and cross paths and cross over in front of other actors. Now, there'd still be virtual and there'd still be issues with it, but wouldn't that be a fun experiment to do? Gosh, I've literally just thought of that as I'm saying this, and it sounds really exciting. Someone out there develop it, or I'll have to. Not that I have these skills. But doesn't that sound very exciting indeed? Anyway, I'm going to begin to wrap this one up here. I just wanted to do this just to say, hey, I'm back. There's going to be lots more. I've got some very, very exciting stuff coming up from Extreme Improv. And I've got some really exciting stuff for the improv world, which I'm so excited. I'm just like preparing stuff in the background, which I haven't really been telling people about. Stuff that's going to be revealed and then out soon. And hopefully it's going to get some people excited. But for now, I'm going to tell you everything where you can find us. So we have live shows on facebook.com/extreme improv, twitch.tv/extreme improv, youtube.com/extreme improv every week. And they're on a Wednesday and a Thursday at 8:30 p.m. That's UK time. And then we have a Friday matinee show at 12 p.m. UK time. We're starting to do other shows. As always, we've got lots of podcasts. We've got the Extreme Improv podcast, which you can subscribe to get all of our different improv podcasts. But then if you want the specific ones, this is the Extreme Improv Skills Show. We have the Extreme Improv Chat Show, where we interview different improvisers and other people from around the world. And the Extreme Improv Radio Rumble, which is kind of like the streaming shows we've been doing, but it's just the audio versions without the interactive live chat bits that I was describing earlier, which in fact, if anything, makes it a little bit of a tighter show, more games, that kind of thing. We're going to have some exciting stuff, so do like us on social media. We're on TikTok now, so that's Extreme Improv on TikTok. Just search Extreme Improv. We've got lots of exclusive fun bits on there. We also have Extreme Improv on Facebook. If you go click like on that page, we have Extreme Improv on Instagram, where you can often see behind the scenes stuff of our live shows. Literally, if you're hearing this today, and today is the 26th of June 2020, at 8 p.m. UK time, we are going to do a Extreme Improv Games Night, which is our first foray in doing a live presentation of a tabletop game that we're going to play, and we're going to be playing Paranoia. So we hope people look forward to and enjoy that. So my name is David Postansky, and until next time, make sure you keep things extreme.